Hey, do you remember last time Flo came to visit? Maybe you were surfing on that crimson wave? Or maybe you're one of those people that are completely in sync with the full moon. Get it? Yes, we're going to talk about the menstrual cycle, the period, the bloody days, and all the shame associated with it. And I'm going to tell you why I tried to skip my period for about 16 years. Let's go. Before we start, let me tell you that I'm in no way a medical professional, and this video doesn't provide medical advice. I'm sharing my personal experience. If you need information about your own health, please consult with a doctor. So let's go back to the beginning. The very first time I had my period, I must have been about 10 or 11. I definitely was still in primary school because I remember having to wear those enormous pads and even worse, having to change those pads in those very cold, very echoey primary school toilets. I was terrified of anyone noticing, of leaving a blood stain anywhere. I hated it. From then on, my period was an annoyance at best. I really hated to be reminded every month of the reproductive potential of my body. I just wanted to live my life, to not be bothered about it, to just be functional, be constant all the time. I went through the motions without really thinking about it until I was about 15, and I started to campaign my mom to let me take the birth control pill. My mom didn't really want me to take the pill because she really thought that the pill will cause me breast cancer, which isn't as straightforward. There's evidence that the pill could slightly increase the risk of breast cancer, but just like loads and loads of other things that we do every day. However, the pill has a huge list of side effects no one told me about. Common side effects include acne, bleeding or spotting between periods, bloating, blood pressure above the usual range, depression, fatigue, feeling dizzy, fluid retention, headaches, increased appetite, insomnia, melasma, mood swings, nausea, tenderness or pain in the breast, vomiting, and weight gain. One of the reasons I really wanted to take the pill was not so much because I was having sex, because I wasn't at the time. I knew that if you were to take the pill constantly, so without breaking for the normal 7 days that you're supposed to break after 21 days of taking the tablet, you would skip your period. And I thought, this is great, I'm just gonna do that and, not have a period for a while. So I did that little dodgy system of taking the pill constantly without breaking for allowing a period to arrive until I was about 22. I definitely felt a lot of guilt of not allowing my body to menstruate, even though at the time I didn't know that your menstruation when you're on the pill isn't actually a menstruation, it's just a withdrawal bleeding because your body is kind of lacking the synthetic hormones that you've been taking for 21 days. There is very little evidence that period is actually good or bad for the body. You could completely skip it and it wouldn't change anything. So why on earth are people on the pill still bleeding? When I was about 22, I decided that I had enough of taking the pill. I had enough of thinking about it every day. I had enough of having to remember to take a pill every day at the same time. I just had enough of it. Not that I ever forgot, but I just didn't want to have that thing on top of everything else to think about. So I researched and I found at the time what I thought was the best possible solution for me, called the hormonal IUD. And the way it works is that a little device is put in your uterus by a medical professional. It stays there for a number of years until it's removed by another medical professional. This has obviously contraceptive benefits, qualities. The hormonal IUD also has a huge list of side effects that I read and decided to not take into account. Common side effects include missed periods, bleeding and spotting between periods, heavier bleeding during the first few weeks, abdominal and or pelvic pain, ovarian cysts, migraine, nervousness, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, bloating, breast tenderness or pain, weight gain, changes in hair growth, acne, depression, changes in mood, loss of interest in sex, itching or skin rash. But what I really was attracted by was the possibility of not having a period, because the hormonal IUD, as the name say, just has a very low dose of hormone constantly in your body. So for some very lucky women in my book, their period could just stop. And I thought, great, I'm gonna do that then. So I got it fitted It was painful, but then I just went on to live my life, especially because I was one of those lucky women and my period almost stopped immediately. 5 years later, when it was time to potentially remove the IUD, I decided to actually get a new one fitted in. And so here we go, round 2. Another fast forward, I'm now 31, and thanks to society reminding women everywhere that they have a best before date, the idea of having children has started to do its little journey in my head. And that's also at that point that I realized that because I've been trying so hard to avoid having a period for 16 years, my body hasn't ovulated. And I thought, have I completely fucked it up now? I did what I do best. I researched the shit out of it. And I found very little scientific research on the subject, but lots and lots and lots of first-person experience of women explaining that they had the hormonal IUD fitted in, and then when they removed it and tried to get pregnant, they went on to have multiple miscarriages, which sounded extremely traumatic. So I thought, let's just go au naturel for a few years. Hopefully my body will have flushed out all those synthetic hormones and all the things that I've done to it and maybe repair itself. I've got loads of confidence in my body doing incredible things. And then if I ever want to have children, I'll be ready. So that's what I did. In January 2019, that's when I had my last IUD removed. And that's when I started to get really interested in what was going to happen to my body then. What was the menstrual cycle? What was a period? Why will I bleed? And how will I bleed? Will it be painful? What was going to be the most interesting part of my cycle? Because let's face it, I was about to go through the motions again and again and again until menopause. Better get interested in it. Let's have a look at the menstrual cycle. It lasts about a month, but that's about the only average that I will give you today, because we're all a bit unique. But what's true though for anyone who's currently going through the motions and has a uterus is that the menstrual cycle is composed by 2 phases, each starting with an event. So the first phase is called the follicular phase, and the second phase is called the luteal phase. What starts the follicular phase is the menstruation, and what starts the luteal phase is the ovulation. So let's start with the beginning. First day of your cycle is the first day of your period. Why would we start with the end? Well, because that's the most visible thing that happens to you during your cycle. First day of your period, you bleed, you can't miss it. Why do we bleed? Well, I'll get to this in a moment. The only thing I'm going to suggest right now is that we all take a little break during our period, or at least we take a little bit easier. It's not always possible, we all have things to do, but maybe this is not the best time to start doing something really, really hard on yourself. I'm sure you know that saying, everything you do, I can do bleeding. Sure, but why? Do you have something to prove to someone? So yeah, if you can, listen to your body, rest up. You'll definitely need the energy a bit later. And then nothing? You wait until you bleed again? No. Right now is the moment when your body is getting ready to ovulate. And you feel maybe a bit happier, lighter, more positive, maybe energized. And this is because you're getting high on estrogen. So when your estrogen peaks, that is when you ovulate. And as soon as the ovum is released, your estrogen is going well down, and at the same time your progesterone is going up. The progesterone is the nesting hormone. That's the hormone that is going to make your uterus lining nice and thick, just in case. Fun fact about ovulation, once your ovum is released, it has a life expectancy of about 12 to 24 hours, which is extremely short. But obviously, there is a trick. Did you know that sperm can live in someone else's body for up to 5 days? Does that gross me out? Absolutely yes. When you think about it, your fertile window is actually just about 5 days. 4 days before your ovulation and about 1 day after the ovum is released. This is proof that you should time your intercourse well for any result that you want to achieve or any result you want to avoid. Let's say you didn't do anything to get pregnant. Your ovum dies, and with it, the progesterone starts dropping. This is, for me, the absolute worst moment of my cycle. That's the moment we also call PMS, premenstrual syndrome. I feel extremely moody, irritable, sometimes depressed, anxious, and once or twice completely suicidal. Physically, I have headaches, I feel bloated, I feel disgusting. The lack of progesterone is definitely something that I don't live very well. If you're like me and you feel absolute rubbish a few days before your period, I feel you. And maybe you've sought advice on this and someone told you that, hey, it's part of the deal, that's how it's gonna be. What's true is that there's very, very little research on how to make PMS better. And more on that in a minute. When your level of progesterone is almost null, your period starts. You get rid of the lining of your uterus, and that's why you bleed. And seeing this blood can be an absolute relief or a little death, depending on where we are in our life. It's definitely an emotional moment, but also it can be an extremely painful moment. For some of us, the pain that we feel during our period can be compared to contractions. But there's still a pressure for us to function in society, just like we didn't have anything going on in our bodies. Everything you do, I can do bleeding? Do you still think that's a good motto to have? So why am I telling you about all this? Well, because talking about the menstrual cycle is still extremely uncomfortable. I'm pretty outspoken about all this, and it still took me 2 trials and hours of content writing to be able to tell you about this without cringing and without telling stupid jokes at the end of every sentence. There is a lot of shame associated with the menstrual cycle. We don't want to talk about it as a society. So much so that even for menstrual product, the advertiser thought that it was a good idea to make the blood blue. I don't know if you remember, but a few years back, a woman decided to run a marathon on her period and just free bleed, let it flow. And the media thought it was the most edgy and disruptive thing ever. And let's talk about sexuality for a few seconds. People on their period can feel extremely horny, but suggesting to have sex during period is seen as disgusting. You usually hear, ew, but there's gonna be blood everywhere. Now think about all the men that have absolutely no problem suggesting to ejaculate on various parts of a woman's body. What is true? I'm starting to think that it's not so much the blood in itself that is the issue, but more where it comes from. That secret, sometimes sacred, but very often pictured as a direct door to hell, I call the vagina. So yeah, good idea. Let's keep it as mystic as possible, add a bit of witchcraft and a bit of full moon in the mix, and here you have it. Whatever happens in a woman's knickers isn't anyone's problem. That is probably why there has been so little medical studies on the menstrual cycle and how to alleviate the problem with PMS and even menstrual pain. That, or the fact that women haven't been playing a leading role in medicine until very recently. But you see, it wasn't so hard to explain what happens during the menstrual cycle. I literally just did it. And since I've learned about the why, the when, the how, I definitely feel that the menstrual cycle is part of me, not something that is happening to me. That I don't have to aspire to be constant, to be always the same, because that is just not how my body was built. And I think that if we keep talking about periods as something that happens to us, rather than something that is part of us, and not to listen to our bodies when we need resting, when we are in pain, and just putting that in a corner, this is not going to solve the issue. I hope that you found this video interesting, or at least that it sparked some curiosity in you. I will link some resources in the description. And I really hope that you will join the movement of people everywhere talking freely about their periods. If you like what you've seen, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.